You need to hear this because most people never recognize it coming. The instant you stop chasing them, they noticed far sooner than you might think, but not in the way you probably imagine, not with relief, not with casual indifference. Instead, they noticed with a sudden and unsettling awareness, an awareness that reaches deep into their private thoughts and shakes them at the foundation. When you stop pursuing someone, the world around them does not merely change in subtle ways. The person you once chased begins a silent and invisible process of unraveling within themselves. And this is where things become genuinely dangerous for them. They sense a void where your attention, energy, and presence once existed. A void they never completely realized was there before. Now that space feels enormous and exposed. They are not used to dealing with that kind of silence, so they begin to panic without fully understanding the source of it. Your absence is not truly absence in their mind. It functions more like a mirror. It reflects the parts of themselves they never wanted to confront. Deep down, they realize that their feeling of influence and control over you has suddenly disappeared. And what happens when that sense of control fades away? Their inner world becomes restless and uneasy. It grows desperate in ways they struggle to explain. It begins whispering uncomfortable truths they would rather avoid acknowledging. The truths they escape from during the day return to disturb them at night. They begin questioning whether they wanted you for who you genuinely were, or simply for the way you made them feel valued and significant. And now that you are no longer there, that illusion starts collapsing piece by piece. Yet they cannot see it clearly within their conscious mind. Their thoughts become divided between what they hope is true and what they fear might be true. That internal struggle pushes them toward a form of quiet chaos they cannot easily put into words. They begin imagining your life moving ahead without them. Every laugh you share, every smile you offer someone else, and every moment you spend without thinking about them begins affecting them in ways they never expected. And here comes the difficult part that catches many people by surprise. It is not only longing they experience, there is also fear, resentment, frustration, and guilt mixed together in ways they cannot properly untangle. These emotions emerge through strange behaviors that may appear irrational, inconsistent, or even reckless at times. Most people never confront these feelings directly. They attempt to escape the discomfort. They pretend it is not there, yet you brought it into the open simply by stepping back, by creating distance, and by allowing them to sit with an emptiness they were never prepared to face. Something deep and instinctive awakens inside them. Something buried beneath layers of denial begins to stir with surprising intensity. That inner voice that remained silent for so long suddenly grows louder. It tells them they cannot afford to lose you. It tells them they cannot let you go so easily. They begin replaying every conversation, every message, every glance, and every small interaction you shared together. They examine themselves closely, and they examine you as well. They search for the exact moment where they might pull you back into their world. And here is the part that feels most unsettling. They develop a powerful urge to act, not always in a calculated way. Sometimes it happens suddenly and impulsively because the human mind dislikes unfinished stories and uncertainty more than almost anything else. And you have created the greatest form of uncertainty they have ever experienced. You may not notice it from your side. You may believe the silence feels peaceful and that your absence creates no meaningful disruption. But absence, when used correctly, becomes one of the most powerful forces imaginable. The moment they realize they can no longer make you chase them is the moment their carefully constructed image begins to crack. Once that image starts breaking apart, everything they kept hidden begins emerging into view. All the emotions they buried, all the truths they denied, all the insecurities they avoided for years begin rising toward the surface. And that is the dangerous part, because the calm and composed person you once saw on the outside is no longer the person they recognize within themselves. They struggle to understand what is happening even when understanding seems impossible. Within your silence, you have become the center of their internal conflict. But here is what keeps this story moving forward. What comes next is something they cannot predict. Even they do not fully understand it yet. The silence you created is not empty at all. It acts as a mirror, reflecting everything they have spent years avoiding. And that reflection is preparing to speak louder with every passing day. They cannot stop thinking about it, not because they choose to, but because the space you left behind refuses to disappear. Here is the truth they often hide even from themselves. In many situations, absence feels far more frightening than direct rejection. Rejection has a shape. It can be understood. It can eventually be processed. Absence feels like chaos. It is an open space where their deepest fears are free to create endless possibilities. And that is where everything becomes complicated. They start noticing every small detail they once ignored. Every pause in communication. Every delayed response. Every smile that does not include them suddenly takes on new meaning. Each small withdrawal of your attention lands heavily on their inner world. They replay moments that once seemed insignificant, the joke you laughed at when they were not around, the brief glance you gave someone else, the message you did not answer right away. All of it repeats endlessly in their thoughts, and during that replay, they begin discovering patterns, or at least what they believe are patterns. Their mind desperately searches for meaning. Their pride struggles with uncertainty. And uncertainty is exactly what you handed them the moment you stepped away. The parts that speak softly during lonely moments and whisper that they feel vulnerable, that they are not enough, that they long for something they can no longer easily obtain. Most people try to avoid these emotions immediately. They search for distractions. They attempt to rationalize the anxiety through logic and analysis. But this is not something logic can easily solve. This is profound emotional distress making its way into everyday life. And this is the stage where everything can start changing quickly. The longer you remain absent, the stronger their internal turmoil becomes. They start recognizing qualities about you they overlooked before. The way you carry yourself with quiet confidence. The way you smile naturally without needing their validation. The way your life keeps progressing forward. Every new observation feels uncomfortable. Every fresh realization adds to the tension growing within them. Yet they remain caught between fear and longing, between what they deeply desire and what they are willing to acknowledge openly. The more they observe from afar, the more they understand something they spent a long time refusing to face. Your attention was never guaranteed. Your presence was never permanent. And now they are being forced to confront that truth. What once felt secure suddenly feels uncertain. What once felt available now seems unreachable. That realization grows heavier with every passing day. They begin calculating the value of what they lost, only after it is no longer easily accessible. Their mind moves endlessly around the same questions. Could things have turned out differently? Could they have responded differently? Could they still repair what has already begun slipping away? These questions rarely bring relief. Instead, they generate even more pressure. The answers never arrive clearly. And because those answers remain hidden, the mind continues searching. It keeps revisiting memories, replaying conversations, and examining every detail in hopes of finding certainty. Meanwhile, your silence continues performing its work, not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. Every day that passes without your pursuit becomes another reminder that the old dynamic no longer exists. The rules they once depended upon no longer apply. The certainty they previously enjoyed has disappeared. And that is what disturbs them most. Not simply the possibility of losing you, but the realization that they no longer control the outcome. They cannot predict what comes next. They cannot assume you will return. They cannot depend on old habits to restore their sense of security. So they continue struggling with themselves, torn between reaching out and staying silent, between hope and fear, between pride and vulnerability, between the person they believe themselves to be and the person they are gradually discovering beneath all their defenses. And as this internal conflict grows stronger, one truth becomes impossible for them to ignore. The silence they once dismissed has become the loudest thing in their world. Every unanswered question reverberates through their thoughts. Every memory carries greater significance than before. Every passing day forces them to confront emotions they spent years avoiding. What began as your decision to stop chasing has evolved into something far larger inside them, a confrontation with themselves, a confrontation with their fears, a confrontation with the possibility that what they once took for granted may never return in the same way again. And that possibility lingers within their thoughts long after everything else becomes still. In that confined place, they begin creating scenarios in their mind they never expected before. Fantasies of having influence again, fantasies of reconnecting, and fantasies of somehow balancing the scales, because your decision to step back has exposed an uncomfortable truth. You are not theirs to direct, manage, or possess. You never truly were. And that reality feels painful primarily to them. And here is the unanswered question we leave suspended for now. They are alert now, even if they are not fully aware of it. Their deeper mind has started working against them in certain ways, and they do not know where it will lead next. The struggle has already begun, and somehow you remain at the center of it. They are beginning to unravel without fully recognizing it yet. It starts in subtle ways, like unexplained tension throughout their body. A sudden surge of anxiety catches them by surprise, but it keeps growing. A slow and steady unease slips into every thought, every impulse, and every quiet moment. Here is the difficult truth they must face. Your absence is not simply emptiness. It functions like a mirror they cannot easily escape. And what they see, reflected in that mirror, unsettles them deeply. They see their genuine self without the usual masks. They see their vulnerability, their powerful needs, and their fear of depending on another person. They feel unsettled by their own desires. For a long time, they hid behind illusions of being in control, being superior, and needing no one. And you remove those illusions without making any dramatic gesture. Most people believe confrontation requires direct action. They are mistaken. Walking away is often one of the most powerful forms of confrontation. Silence can be equally powerful. Refusing to chase becomes the strongest statement of all. Now their inner world awakens with force. Every desire they buried begins rising to the surface. Every false narrative they told themselves comes back into view. Every layer of pride and denial rushes forward like a powerful wave striking the shore. They begin feeling a strange mixture of longing and resentment at the same time. Affection mixed with anxiety and desire intertwined with regret. They may find themselves staring at their phone with their fingers hovering above the screen, tempted to send a message. They know they probably should not, yet they struggle to resist the urge completely. In that uncertain moment, the fracture inside them grows deeper, and perhaps the most difficult part for them is that they do not entirely understand why they feel this way. Their conscious mind tries to stay logical, but the deeper layers of the psyche have already taken control. They have become trapped by the uncertainty you created, trapped by the unknown, trapped by a silence that echoes louder than words. Yet they continue revealing very little on the surface, at least for now. The tension keeps expanding quietly within them. Their thoughts become increasingly unsettled. Their longing becomes intertwined with fear. Their hopes become tainted by regret. Their fixation grows deeper and more difficult to manage. They are nearing a breaking point. And when the mind reaches this stage, standing on the edge of collapse can lead either to profound transformation or complete chaos. And at the center of their confusion stands you. This is the moment they are moving toward without fully realizing it. Your absence has done its work quietly, steadily, and without drawing attention to itself. Your decision to stop pursuing has dismantled what they believed they had mastered. Now the outer mask is falling away completely. They stare into the empty space you created and encounter their true self. Not the version they show to the world, but the honest, desperate and frightened person beneath it all. And here is the unsettling truth. They do not like what they see. They dislike the vulnerability. They dislike the need. They dislike the fear of losing something meaningful. They dislike the constant pull that follows them wherever they go. Yet they cannot turn away from it. They cannot erase it because absence uncovered what pursuit never could. Most people never experience this depth of self-confrontation. Most never encounter the version of themselves that emerges when the person they desire walks away. Now they are standing face to face with that version. They want you, yet they fear the intensity of their own emotions. They crave connection, yet they hesitate to acknowledge how deeply they crave it. And this is where the deeper mind begins speaking more clearly than ever before. It tells them they need you, but they cannot return to the old dynamic. It tells them they feel exposed, inadequate, and completely seen for who they truly are. The mind fractures even further because the defenses that once protected them are no longer functioning. What comes next cannot be avoided. The internal storm finally breaks open. They may reach toward you in subtle ways or dramatic ones, but the situation is no longer what it once was. The old game has disappeared. The illusion of control has vanished. They now understand that they have lost the comfort of believing they were always in charge. This is the truth most people spend their lives avoiding. You were never theirs to direct. You were never theirs to keep. By stepping back and ending the chase, you place them before the most unforgiving mirror imaginable, their own mind. Every doubt, every fear, and every secret desire they buried for years now stands plainly before them. The reflection offers no escape and no mercy. They begin noticing things they ignored before, weaknesses they justified, opportunities they missed, moments they failed to recognize. The burden of self-blame grows heavier because it is no longer truly about you. It is about them, their pride, their defenses, their assumptions, their carefully crafted identity collapsing piece by piece. And here is the brilliance of your silence. It did not create awareness through manipulation. It created awareness through absence alone. No one can force genuine reflection through constant pursuit. No one can easily alter another person's inner mirror. Reflection requires distance. It requires boundaries. It requires the strength to stop participating in old patterns. Now they must face themselves. Some will completely unravel. Some will become resentful. Some will desperately try to reclaim what they lost, but every one of them changes in some way. Each one awakens to truths they could not accept before. And this is the final and strangely beautiful contradiction. You did very little, yet everything changed, because when the chase ends, the real story begins. The story was never truly about pursuing someone. It was about looking inward. It was about being exposed. It was about confronting the self honestly and completely. Standing before that empty space, they feel it now, the quiet and unwavering strength of someone who refuses to be controlled, someone who refuses to chase, someone who refuses to diminish themselves for another person's comfort. This is where your absence accomplishes what words, arguments, and endless explanations never could. It creates genuine self-recognition, not only for you and not only for them, but for the truth that was always there beneath fear, desire, denial, and uncertainty. A truth waiting for silence to make it heard. And the final realization they cannot escape is this: I wanted them. I cared about them. I feared losing them, but they were never mine to possess, never mine to control, and never mine to chase endlessly. And now, for the first time, I understand that the person I spent so long avoiding was never what they believed it to be. It was never about control, never about possession, never about winning or losing someone as if they were an object to be secured. It was about projection, about illusion, about the mind attaching meaning where clarity was missing. And now, standing in the aftermath of that internal collapse, they begin to see how much of what they felt was shaped not by reality, but by interpretation. The absence you created did not add something new into their life. It removed the noise that was hiding what was already there. At first, this realization does not bring comfort. It creates resistance. The mind does not easily accept that it has been mistaken, especially when emotions were involved. So they try to rebuild the old narrative in their head. They replay moments, searching for evidence that contradicts the discomfort rising within them. They tell themselves that maybe it was not that deep, maybe they are overthinking, maybe things can still return to how they were before. But something inside them no longer cooperates with that illusion. Because silence, once it becomes consistent, starts rewriting perception. What once felt casual now feels significant. What once felt controllable now feels uncertain. And what once felt temporary now feels like loss. They start to notice that the space you left behind is not empty at all. It is filled with awareness they were avoiding. It reflects back every unspoken emotion they dismissed and every moment they assumed would always be available. And in that reflection, they start meeting a version of themselves they were never prepared to face. Not the version that performs, not the version that adapts, not the version that hides behind confidence or distraction, but the version that waits in silence. The version that feels too deeply and denies it. The version that wanted reassurance but never asked directly. The version that feared rejection so much it disguised need as indifference. This encounter becomes uncomfortable because it removes all excuses. There is no one left to blame in the same way. There is no external distraction strong enough to fully override what they now feel internally. And slowly, reluctantly, they begin to understand that the intensity they are experiencing is not coming from you anymore. It is coming from within them. You only triggered the doorway. They are the ones walking through it. And as this process continues, their perception of you also shifts. You are no longer just a presence they could access whenever they chose. You become something else in their mind, something less predictable, something more defined by absence than availability. And ironically, the less accessible you are, the more their mind fills in the gaps. Not always accurately, but emotionally. They start remembering selectively. The good moments become brighter, the unresolved moments become heavier, the unfinished emotional threads begin to pull at them in quiet ways throughout their day. They find themselves thinking of things they did not plan to think about, and each time they try to suppress it, it returns with slightly more weight than before. This is where internal conflict deepens. One part of them wants clarity, another part wants relief, one part wants to reach out, another part fears what reaching out would reveal, because reaching out would mean stepping out of assumption and into reality again. And reality requires vulnerability, something they are now more aware of than ever before. But the most powerful shift is not in their thoughts, it is in their self-perception. They begin to recognize patterns they previously ignored, how quickly they attach meaning, how strongly they react to distance, how easily their inner world destabilizes when certainty is removed. And this recognition is not gentle, it is confronting. It forces them to acknowledge emotional truths they have delayed for a long time. Yet even in this discomfort, transformation begins forming quietly, because awareness, once it enters the system, cannot be fully reversed. They may resist it, they may deny it, they may try to escape it through distraction or pride, but it remains active underneath everything else. It becomes a background process in their mind, continuously reshaping how they interpret themselves and their connections. And somewhere within this process, they begin to understand something they did not understand before. That your silence was not punishment. It was not strategy. It was not an attempt to control the outcome. It was distance that revealed clarity. And clarity, once seen, cannot be unseen. They may not express this realization immediately. In fact, externally, they may still appear unchanged. But internally, the structure has shifted. The emotional certainty they once relied on no longer feels stable. And in its place, something more uncertain but more honest begins to form. They start questioning not just what they felt about you, but how they feel in general when they care about someone deeply. They begin to notice their own thresholds, their own fears, their own attachment patterns. And with every layer they uncover, the image they had of themselves becomes more complex, less idealized, more human. And that is the point where real change quietly begins. Not in dramatic action, not in sudden confession, but in internal recognition. The recognition that what they experienced was real, but also incomplete. That what they assumed was stable was actually fragile. And that what they thought they understood about connection was only one part of a much deeper emotional system within them, because now, for the first time, they are not only thinking about you, they are thinking about themselves.